Hello tanks and tankettes, welcome to a view replay, and this is Captain Cake, who is not a lie. He's in the Crusader, the tier 5 British light tank, and it's a pretty nice little machine, but you don't see many replays of it, and I've been meaning to put one up for a while, and it was the Q&D video from a couple of days ago, where I was talking about how I enjoyed playing the British medium tank line. And it reminded me that actually I had been meaning to find a good Crusader replay to put up. So this is the one I've picked out, and hopefully you will appreciate why within not too long of a time. So the Crusader is basically a medium tank. It's actually a light tank, but it's the only tier 5 light tank that doesn't get scout matchmaking. And if you try and play it like well, you can't play it like a scout. It's a medium tank. And there's actually another tank that's a little bit similar, I would say, the M7 medium on the American seconds, the auto-loading line. And you can actually get a very similar gun for that, because this obviously has the ubiquitous British 6-pounder gun that's very common at the mid-tiers. And it's a pretty good gun to have on this machine. You actually get a 6-pounder gun on the M7 as well. But the M7 is all round faster, although this has slightly better power to weight ratio, but the top speed is 40-something kilometers an hour, whereas the M7 medium gets a much more nippy 60 kilometers an hour. So I'd say the M7's more fun to play as a medium tank, but this is still a fairly capable little machine. The other disadvantage this has compared to the M7 medium is actually the ammo count. 65 rounds of ammo sounds not bad, but I think that's about similar to what the Matilda Black Prince gets. It's not actually that much considering the rate of fire. You might notice the reload counter there. He can get these shots off in just under 2 seconds. Unlike most of the British 6-pounders, that means he can fire the gun faster than he can aim the gun. So you're not often going to get the full rate of fire. Or if you are using the full rate of fire, your shots aren't going to be especially accurate. And it's not a massively accurate gun to begin with. So it's not often you get to sit there and absolutely pump out shell after shell and annihilate somebody that way. But when you do, it can be quite satisfying. Anyway, this is an unwary Kehoe who must have been just outside auto-spotting range. And Captain Cake is quite easily, like, that is just pow pow pow. And the guy's already nearly dead. Although he does manage to make a sort of a getaway, but Cake clearly wants to go after him. He's also taking fire from elsewhere, so this Kehoe is not long for this world. But the downside is, of course, he's spotting for his teammates. So, see if we can get another shot in. About an average roll there, and he fires, maybe would have gotten the kill, but as it is, alas, no, somebody else does for the last bit of damage. So somebody tried to shoot at him. We know there are definitely tank destroyers on the other side, or tanks or whatever, but that is to be expected. I mean, clearly he was thinking there would be vehicles over there. He didn't want to hang around in that line of fire. Meanwhile, towards the north of the map, we've lost a bunch of tanks already, and our KV-1, the only heavy tank this team has, is faffing around in the middle. I don't know why. On the plus side, the enemy team lost their heavy tank. Their Churchill 1 got taken out by our artillery. So at least he's not going to have to be facing off against enemy top tier heavies. But of the enemy team that we know about, there's only 4 that we have tracers for on the minimap right now. And that's a little bit worrying, because that is by far not the majority of the team. Now bear in mind it's 3 arties per side, so that is less kind of frontline fighting vehicles to worry about. But even so, that leaves a whole bunch of tanks not spotted yet that could be in any number of places. Now they might be camping near the enemy cap. They might be, well, I say camping. You kind of have to have a couple of tanks on each side on the opposite sides of the valley on this map, because otherwise it's just not going to work. But this is their opportunity. They have a clear numbers advantage at this point. Our KV-1, meanwhile, has managed to get safely through the middle somehow. We're back in the cap, it's not looking so good. It's Captain Cake, an Su-85B, an M3 Stuart who appears to not actually be awake at the moment. And of course, artillery. Now, we lost our tier 5 arty. The enemy team's got 2 tier 5 arties, we had only 1, and he gets a little bit butthurt in the chat. He gets a little bit mad. artillery player salt may be some of the saltiest salt around. But regardless, it is not particularly good for the team generally because that's their best firepower. So that's a derp Sherman. He's going to have to be careful about that. This does get medium tank hit points. I'll point that out. It actually has slightly more hit points than the M7 medium does, actually. I can't remember offhand how it compares to the Sherman 3, which is an actual proper medium tank. It's a medium tank both in name and nature, whereas this is just a medium tank in nature. But the advantage of being a light tank that is essentially a medium tank is that although you're not particularly well armoured, although it doesn't have a massive amount of firepower, the mobility compares well to other tier 5 mediums, and it gets that light tank camo bonus. So it's got better camo than other mediums do, so you can be a bit sneakier. And that's quite useful in a lot of circumstances. Now, Captain Cake does not have Sixth Sense, so the only time he's going to know if he's been spotted is if either there's line of sight or else he's being shot at by things he can't see. And let's note just now where the KV-1 is on the enemy team, and also the fact that there is an FCM 36 Pack 40 on the enemy team. A nice bit of flanking action up behind this cheeky. Will he take a hit in return? And this guy's not firing, so no. That was a nice little manoeuvre there, although he is in danger. Now the KV-1 died, and the reason I mention the FCM is because this is a 9.4 replay. This is before the view range nerf of 9.6. This is the old FCM with 400 meters base view range. So that could be potentially quite tricky to overcome. So there's the enemy Crusader, and the enemy team, I mean, they had a big numbers advantage, but they haven't really taken advantage of it. They went in dribs and drabs, basically. And okay, he hasn't done that much damage so far, but Captain Cake has also managed to take no damage. And he has killed 2 enemies. However, it's down to now just him and an artillery, so although they have considerably evened the odds, although the enemy team has been disorganised enough to let it get to this state when they had they just had to go in force, and they could have totally overwhelmed the remaining members of Cake's team and Cake himself. But that suicide drive, though, they didn't. They just went in dribs and drabs, and that's what they are continuing to do. So our artillery, his sacrifice was not in vain. I mean, clearly he was hoping to derp that flak bus in the face, which is not a bad plan, but that meant that Cake could get some free shots while the flak bus was actually reloading. However, there's still 3 enemy artillery, like I've said, 2 of which are tier 5. They could both one-shot him if they hit him. Now, there was a very close hit just then from an artillery. I'm going to guess that was the tier 4 artillery, which has basically no splash, or very, very little splash. So it was kind of lucky that that was the one that was a close miss. Like, didn't even turn his tracks yellow. Anyway, he's worried about this Wolverine coming around. We haven't seen him in a little while. This Wolverine is kind of special. The Souffle, I mean, the flak bus is pretty low health now, so he's going to be cautious, and maybe he's waiting for the Wolverine to make a move. And those are the last 2 really mobile units of the enemy team, because the FCM is still in play, but the FCM is slow. Hideously slow. And at this point, the Wolverine makes his play, which is to drive into the cap with his turret facing in the wrong direction. I don't think he's disconnected. I think he is actually in the game. He's making no attempt to fire at Captain Cake whatsoever. And he might have been a problem, but as it turns out, he was just free damage. The Souffle, a little too late, makes an appearance. He might have been able to use that distraction to get round behind Captain Cake, at which point Cake would have been in trouble. But as it is, another quick 3 shells, and there's that rate of fire. It's really starting to come in handy. So we've really evened things down now. It's 3 enemy artillery plus the FCM, who's probably not going to move because that thing has got one of the worst power to weight ratios in the game. It's, I think, slower than a TOG. I mean, it's quite slow. I'm not sure if it's as slow as the T95, but it's still pretty damn slow. Time's also wearing down a bit. We're down to 5.5 minutes, and it looks like he's going to have to go to them at this point. Oh, yes, okay. The FCM has seen him. Remember that 400 meter base view range? He's almost certainly got either optics or binoculars. So he's easily going to spot Captain Cake. Now this might be a little bit of a misplay on Cake's part, but he might just be feeling the time pressure a bit. I wouldn't necessarily have taken this route to try and get across the enemy side. I don't know if he's using mods or not. He may or may not know where the FCM was last spotted. But a safer route would have been maybe hooking around to the north, or if you wanted to try is look at this end of the map, basically going round to, say, G8, that kind of area, and coming round from the high ground, instead of basically driving along through the middle. Anyway, this M41 may not have spotted him up until this point, and that miss might be bad. Oh, okay. Well, the guy was forced to make a snapshot, so it was unlikely to hit Cake, but even so, that could have been nasty, that one missed shot. So it's taking a moment to try and get unspotted again, but that at least is one less artillery firing at him, and it's one of the tier 5 arties as well. It was a little unexpected, that guy coming down, but potentially he was going to the friendly cap circle. Potentially he was also aware of the fact that time was ticking down, and if that FCM was unwilling to move or just unable to get up the other side in time, well, that tier 5 American arty is actually sort of reasonably mobile. Now again, this is the really incautious route to be taking. There is no cover here. Oh, hello, that's unwelcome. The gorilla may not have spotted him, but the souffle will have done, the tier 4 arty. And there's the FCM, who, I mean, he's also out in the open, but this is really, really hurting. The FCM has got a good rate of fire, and okay. That was a little bit intense. He went from full hit points to 51 hit points in about, what, 30 seconds? All from that FCM, and that was a little bit unlucky that he got set on fire by the guy, but even so, that nearly went very, very badly wrong. Very badly wrong indeed. But he held his nerve, and even though I think it was a misplay from him being around there, even if that tier 4 arty hadn't spotted him, the FCM would have. It was well within the FCM spotting range, so personally I think that was a bit of a misplay, but he got away with it crucially. And it's now just down to him and this gorilla. He's got 7 kills. He's extremely low health. A close splash will kill him, but there's a chance for glory here. If he does this, he could walk away with not only a Kolobanov's medal for facing off against 5 enemies and winning, not only a Radley-Walters medal, but a Pascucci's medal as well, which would be a really nice combo if he can do it. So he's being pretty cautious now. We're down to the last 2 minutes, and he's trying to proxy spot this gorilla. He knows where the gorilla last was, so maybe he does have a mini-map like Locastans or whatever. But as it was, the gorilla looks like he was just trying to make a getaway. But a little bit too late. I mean, the gorilla might have been thinking about trying to play for a draw, but no, he got spotted in making that getaway, and he's had time to turn his tank around, however. So we're not done yet, but the odds in terms of making a snapshot, they're probably in Captain Cake's favour. But even so, this is a risky proposition. However, Captain Cake does a really clever thing. He tracks the guy. We don't know if he had a repair kit. I mean, if he had a repair kit, he presumably would have used it already. But having tracked him, knowing his crew probably doesn't have a good repair speed, then he just drives round and bam, there we go. So he did it. He pulled it off. He came awfully close to losing it just with that incautious push through the open there. And yes, maybe he was feeling the time pressure a bit, but even so, I think with the Crusader, you've got enough mobility to have maybe done that in a slightly safer way. But it paid off. He crucially took out that very dangerous FCM, and it was lucky that that FCM was such low health that it was a one-shot kill for his gun, because the 6-pounder doesn't have a lot of shell damage. But despite that, despite the nature of this gun, he was able to make the fullest use of it. He was able to rack up a pretty good damage count, and he says himself this was his first ever Radley-Walters medal, and he really wasn't expecting to get it in a Crusader. So I think this was a result that he should justly feel proud of. This was a really good game, and the fact that he was able to preserve all his hit points turned out to be really, really crucial for that one particular moment. So sometimes, yeah, it's just these little things as you go along that in a battle you get to a certain pivotal point and something that you did or didn't do earlier on turns out to be of particular importance, and that was definitely the case this time. So if you enjoyed this particular replay, this lesser seen machine on YouTube, you can leave any comments below, you can hit the like button, you can subscribe to my channel, and as always, stay tuned for more.